Welcome to r/EntitledParents, where this entitled Boy Scout sets his cop dad on an innocent counselor. Entitled kid tries sending his police officer dad after me in a pro-revenge attempt. His plan backfires. From the mid-90s through early 2000s, I've spent my summers working as a counselor at a Boy Scout summer camp. I've worked in several different program areas, but this story happened when I was the director of the rifle range. Every week, we would get a new group of campers, and when they came up to the range for orientation, I would go over all the safety rules. I would finish by telling the kids, you all get one warning on this range, and this is the warning. There are only two safe directions to point your rifles, up in the air or down range. It doesn't matter if your gun is loaded or unloaded. If you break this rule and deliberately point your rifle in any other direction, you will be kicked off this range and will not be allowed to shoot here for the rest of the week. I would go over all of these rules again for the kids on the first day of merit badge classes to satisfy the safety rule requirement for the badge. And there were plenty of posters hanging around the range with all of the safety rules on them. In other words, there were no excuses to break them. One day, the scouts in my merit badge class were practicing shooting for the test they had to take at the end of the week. One scout, the entitled kid of this story, thought it would be funny to point his rifle at another scout and spout off some random action movie line. I ran up and snatched the rifle from his hands and yelled, "What the heck are you doing?" The entitled scout responds, But the gun wasn't loaded. Recite the safety rules now. The entitled scout recited them all, including the part about pointing the gun in an unsafe direction. I told him to hand over his shooting ticket. I tore it in half and said he was done on my range for the rest of the week. Later that afternoon, the range was open for free shooting. Everything was going smoothly, until I noticed the entitled scout walking up the trail towards the range with his father, an assistant scout master who was built like an NFL linebacker. After the round of shooting ended, I called a ceasefire and told my assistant to keep an eye on the range while I handled the situation that was about to happen. As I approached the entitled scout and his father, he jumped up and down, pointed at me, and yelled, "That's him! He's the one who tore up my ticket and kicked me off the range! You're gonna get it now. My dad's a cop, and you're going to be sorry for what you did." Before I could get a word out, Cop Dad gets in my face and started chewing my butt out, drill sergeant style. Now, this story happened so long ago that I don't remember exactly what Cop Dad was shouting. I mostly remembered the poop-eating grin the entitled scout gave me as he watched his father tear me a new one. I just stood there quietly and patiently, waiting for my turn to respond. Finally, Cop Dad said something along the lines of, "So, what do you have to say for yourself?" "Yes, I did tear up your son's shooting ticket and I kicked him off my range," I replied. "But did your son mention why I did that?" Cop Dad's face went from angry to inquisitive. He blinked in rapid succession as he said, No, now that you mention it, he didn't tell me why." We both turned our attention to the entitled scout. His smile faded and he shrunk in our presence as he realized that his plan had just backfired. I loved returning the same poop-eating grin that he gave me a few moments earlier. To the entitled scout's credit, he did tell the truth. He probably knew better than to lie to Cop Dad. And if looks could kill, the look on Cop Dad's face would have killed his son several times over. After a moment of silence, he finally said, in one of the most intimidating voices I've ever heard in my life, "Go back to camp and wait for me at your tent. I'll deal with you soon." The entitled scout left to the tune of Dead Man Walking. Cop Dad turned to me and apologized for getting angry and chewing my butt out before knowing all the facts, to which I accepted his apology. For the rest of the week, Cop Dad would come to the range every day during open shoot my rifles, and would hang out and talk with me. Turned out he was actually a pretty cool guy. At the end of the week, he told me that when they got home, he will finish his son's rifle shooting merit badge, and he'll make sure that his son will never disrespect a firearm ever again. You know what? I actually rate this dad quite a lot. How many stories have we seen over the years now of entitled parents just doing exactly what their kid says, or not even listening to any other context or anyone else involved, just saying, "Oh no, my angel is in trouble, therefore I'm going to completely take their side." But to be fair to this dad, once he actually learned the context of what had actually happened, he switched. Good man. I mean, let's be completely honest. This is very, very serious. It's a very, very serious situation. Even if the gun wasn't loaded, I mean, who really cares? Who knows, right? First of all, it definitely could have been. Second of all, it's just a terrible thing to do anyway. Especially given the fact that he knows the rules, but is just probably trying to show off. Yeah, his dad needs to let him know to never do that again. But once again, fair play to the dad for not just completely going crazy at you when you realise what had actually happened. Entitled ex-landlord demands I leave behind the washer and dryer I paid for. So for the past 2 years, I, a 25-year-old man, lived in a small apartment building. The apartment didn't have a laundry room for the building when I moved in, but it did come with hookups for a washer and dryer in the apartment. So I bought them myself because I work for a wildlife sanctuary and I get pretty dirty during my work. Just the other day, I had to chase down and wrestle one of our wild boars, Bacon. We didn't name him that, he came with that name, who loves to escape his pen and thinks it's funny to play chase. I got completely dirty. I was covered in grass stains and mud, so I very much need a washer and dryer. My boyfriend and I just got engaged, and since my lease was up, I moved into his house with him. I finished moving everything out of my old apartment yesterday, and I thought nothing about taking my washer and dryer with me as I had bought them. My boyfriend also had some, but they were old and kept breaking down and just cost too much to have fixed. Well, I woke up this morning to multiple missed calls from my old landlord. I left my phone number and new address in case any mail was delivered to my old place. I called him back and he asked me why the washer and dryer was gone. I explained that I took them with me. He started freaking out, saying that he'd put that the place had a washer and dryer in the ad for the place. Apparently, I have raised the rent due to having those. He started demanding that I bring them back because the new clients that he set up to move in had already signed the lease, but they're not interested in the place without the washer and dryer. He even threatened to call the police if I don't take them back. I got angry and told him that I would do no such thing, reminding him that they belong to me. I bought them and I still had the receipts from when I bought them, as well as a text from him when I moved explaining that I was buying them myself. He again though threatened to call the police. I told him to do it and see what happened, and I hung up at that point. Personally, I don't think I'm in the wrong. I bought them and they weren't cheap, so I feel I have the right to take them. My boyfriend is on my side, but today a co-worker of mine said they think that I'm the jerk for not telling the landlord that I was going to take them. In my opinion, that should have been obvious. I pay for them, why would I leave them? Well, my landlord went through with calling the police because the next day they showed up. Honestly, nothing really noteworthy happened. I explained to them what was going on and I showed them the receipt for the washer and dryer, as well as a text from the landlord that I had from when I told him I was buying them. The cops took my statement and left. My boyfriend's father is a lawyer and he's going to be contacting my landlord and sorting everything out. He advised me not to respond to said landlord anymore for the time being. Yeah, this is completely and utterly ridiculous, and to be honest, I actually understand why the landlord is so angry, because he knows he's clearly effed up here. If he genuinely thought for some stupid reason that you were going to leave the washer and dryer, then it does make sense to advertise the place as having a washer and dryer, and then yeah, you can probably raise the rent a little bit due to having those appliances. But why has he done that in the first place? It's so dumb. He's messed up so badly. Now he's realised it and he's coming after you just to try and intimidate you, I guess, into letting him keep the washer and dryer. But, you know, as you said, they are legally yours. You bought them with your own money. You can obviously do what you want with them and you have the receipts. Simple enough. You shouldn't even need a lawyer here. Just, you know, you gave the police the statement and you showed them the receipts. You're completely fine. The landlord, though, is an absolute clown. Patient's boyfriend is mad that he has to pick up his own Uber Eats. I work in a high-level hospital as an ICU nurse, and my managers are fantastic with staffing. Meaning, if you have a crashing, heavy workload patient, they'll make the other patient you have an easier one so you can focus on the sick one. For background, ICU nurses have 2 patients, and we specialize in critical thinking, whereas the tele floor is the normal part of the hospital that people think about and holds less sick people who don't need as much attention. So these nurses have 6 patients and specialize in tasks and prioritization. So the beginning of my shift after the report, I show my face and say hi to my less sick patient who is doing fantastically and is just waiting for transport to take her to her telebed. I say I'll be back at around 9 PM in 2 hours, unless she needs me for something. So this gives me time to stabilize the sick patient next door. Unfortunately, the sick patient in room 1 starts coding and the team is actively doing CPR. Crash cart in the hallway, 3 docs here, the whole team trying to save this young dude. My team is working on meds, intubating, keeping compressions going, etc., while I'm talking with doctors about what could have caused it. And I'm halfway outside the room for the healthier patient in room 2. She sees me through the window, presses the call light, and I ignore it, because I have, what should have been obviously, very pressing matters. Her boyfriend ends up opening the door and standing in the doorway to just stare at me with his arms crossed. just to give them the benefit of the doubt that she could be concerned about her health, I say, "Is everything alright?" And he goes, and tries to lead me inside. Of course, I only pay attention to him when the docs go into room 1 to brainstorm on their own and assess where to go if we get the guy back. I look back through the window of room 1 and realize I can give them 5 seconds to make sure nothing funky is going on. So she says, "Can you get my Uber Eats order? It just said it arrived downstairs." I swear I could have had a stroke from high blood pressure at that moment. So I kindly say, "I'm sorry, I'm busy with another critical patient. Could you?" I looked at the boyfriend, who's plopped in the recliner with his feet up, watching Netflix again on his phone. "Go and get it for her?" And he goes, "I'd rather not." Oh, good sir, you don't want to? You saw the mess next door through the window, me talking seriously with 3 docs, and the hot mess of people outside your room as we try to save a dang life. So I tell him, I can't. The entire team is actively trying to save someone, and none of us are available to leave. So either you get it, or I can have someone get saltines for you instead. He sighs, gets up slowly, and then says, "Fine, I guess I'll go get it then," as I turn to head back into room 1. The dude literally has to turn his shoulders to slide through the massive group of people. Still angry, he has to take 1 elevator down. When they get moved to another room at around 10 PM, he's speaking loudly on the phone to someone, saying things like the nurses are rude, they won't even get food for their patients, etc. The icing on the cake? She had just gotten off an insulin drip for being in a diabetic coma. Never met a more entitled person who put having to walk and get their own food delivery above someone else's life. Well, there it is. That is definitely the most ludicrous story that we've had on this episode so far. I mean, that is an absolute disgrace. I don't even care, right? And I don't mean this in a rude way to the guy that was obviously in a very life-threatening condition. I don't care if somebody is in a life-threatening condition. You can't ask a nurse at any hospital ever to go and get your food for you that you've ordered. That is just so dumb. Even if they're dealing with just, standard patients that are sick enough to be in hospital but are doing fine. Why would you ever ask a nurse to do that? Unless you are literally on your own with no one else around to help you, and perhaps you've pre-agreed with them that you're going to order some food. Could someone go and get it for you? Ideally not a nurse. Then it's fine. But if you've got someone there in the room as well and they can't be bothered to go downstairs and get you your food, what's the point? And also, why are they even there in the first place? Are they not there to kind of give you support, look after you when you're in hospital? Go and get your food perhaps that you've ordered? Who knows? Absolutely crazy. Get your comments down below for that one, guys. Just insane. Now for our final story of this episode. This one I'm looking forward to. Thanks to Reddit, I stood up to an entitled Karen. What a title that is. I've been following various communities on Reddit for a few years now. To name a few, r/AmITheJerk, EntitledParents, and of course, r/EntitledPeople, as well as the website Not Always Right. Wondering if people like that really exist, or if it was mostly creative writing. I also wondered how I would react if I ever witnessed something like that myself. Well, now I know. A few weeks ago, on a bright Sunday morning, I was on my way to the zoo with my daughter, who is 2, and my niece, who is 2.5. I stopped by the grocery store for a picnic. I don't know what it's like where you live, but here, foods and drinks and amusement parks and other places are far too expensive. Yes, that is true in England and America, to be fair. I had the girls in the trolley and got in line to the cashier. The lines were long, but hey, life, right? The cashier was doing her thing while chatting with the clients, and I was minding my own business, talking with the kids and patiently waiting. Suddenly, I hear shouting and see an irate woman yelling at the poor cashier, who was visibly getting more and more upset. The client, an older woman with no distinctive features, was yelling like a banshee because the cashier dared to wish a good day to the previous client and basically be nice and friendly. And because of that, our dear Karen was running late. Again, it was around 10:30 to 11 on a Sunday morning. FFS. That's when I remembered all those stories. Those poor workers who were basically not allowed to talk back and have to take the abuse. And I decided to intervene. I have a very strong voice that carries loud when I want to. I asked loud enough for the entire store to hear, "What the heck is your problem? What kind of behavior is that?" I think the Karen was not expecting someone to dare to stop her tirade. She recovered and tried replying. I stopped her and told her that she was the only one holding back the line and that the cashier was doing her job and doing it well. In the meantime, the manager had arrived and had replaced the cashier, who was crying, with another worker and came to ask what was going on. Karen starts again. I let her rant for a few seconds and then gave my version of what happened in the most calm and sane voice possible. Let me tell you, Karen was fuming and started complaining again about the cashier being slow because she was chatting nicely with the customers. By then, her grocery was finished being rung and the manager asked her to pay and leave. This might not be the best climax compared to all the other stories I've read here, and if you've read so far, I hope that if you also encounter this type of entitlement, you will also remember all these Reddit stories and decide to act. Thanks for reading mine. Well, there we go. If you thought that me reading out all these stories every day was pointless, then you're wrong, as we can see. A jest, of course, but you know, maybe that is the learning from all of us here. You know, if you see someone that's actively doing or wronging someone, and there's no reason for it, jump in. We've seen so many stories, again, over the years, where people haven't done that, and it's a shame, isn't it? Because just one little act of intervention, like we've seen here from OP, can have a massive, massive difference. Who knows? This woman, right, having a lovely day, this cashier, she could have really thought to herself, you know what, I'm done with this. If it's going to take just one person to ruin my day like that and cause me to cry, I don't want to do this anymore. But who knows? You jumping in may have made her thought, yeah, there are people like that are always going to be in the world and are going to be horrible. But if the majority of people are lovely and like chatting to me, and then people like you, OP, will come to my aid and my rescue when that does happen, maybe it's all good. And we can just deal with these sort of people together. So yeah, you know what? I've learned a valuable lesson. Next time I see something like this, I'm getting involved. That is for sure. And you should get involved, guys, by liking this episode, if you enjoyed it, of course. If you want more from me right away, then subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get pushed loads of my other videos and episodes. Follow me on whatever platform you're on, and make sure you're tuned in for tomorrow's upload. Same time, same place. See you over there.